I'm unhappy about the way things are going.
Guerrillas file out of the bush as part of
Africans to develop their own
to
bodies.
accept Mr. Smith's view of things is the Church, especially the Roman Catholic Church. In spite of the uncertain future, the bishop is going ahead with his plan.
By the late 1970s, a war for the soul of Zimbabwe had reached the missions of Manicaland. A Carmelite friar, now bishop, stood his ground, and so did the brethren who stayed beside him. And in standing their ground, they gave the local church a voice of its own. And by the end of their fourth decade in Zimbabwe, an African church led and shepherded by Africans had never felt closer. "20 years earlier, 3 Carmelite friars had stepped off a train into a country that barely knew their order. By 1966, that handful had become a diocese, missions strung across the Eastern Highlands, a cathedral rising in Mutare, and a bishop, Donald Lamont, who had already declared that the church could not stay silent. He had said as much in 1959 in a pastoral letter, A Purchased People.
And he wrote his little book, The Purchased People, in 1957. And he took that little book to the other bishops to be signed, and they refused. Because they thought he's a man who is lifting dust and good communication with the government, But he was ahead of his time. They didn't understand him, and even some of the Africans didn't understand him. Every time he came to say mass out of station on the missions, at the end of mass he always sang this song, Africa. Kombore, Kombore, Ishe Komborera, Africa. Always, at any mass. But we didn't understand. This is Murungus.
But beyond the growth of the church, the political landscape was shifting.
Conscious that the people of Rhodesia have...
In 1965, Ian Smith's government broke from British control. The Unilateral Declaration of Independence, UDI. For the missions, UDI meant something very practical: permits. Missionaries working in designated African areas were now required to obtain permits in order to continue their ministry. For many church leaders, these measures raised fundamental questions about justice, equality, and the future of the country itself.
The whole idea of the modern young man and woman is with their hearts of goodness to go and serve the underprivileged. Do you think we're going to get priests and nuns and brothers to come out from Britain or Ireland or any other country just to serve a privileged white minority? Not at all.
If you want to preach in Shona in 6 months' time, in the same church that you preached in this morning, will you have to have a permit?
Oh, I think so. I think so.
And if you don't get the piece of paper?
Well, I'm liable, I believe, to a fine of £500 and a year in jail or both.
And will you go ahead and do it?
I certainly wouldn't pay the fine.
No, but I mean, would you go ahead and preach if they wouldn't give you a permit?
Of course. I consider that I've got a mandate, and this is the crux of the whole thing. This is a religious problem.
The Carmelites, not having the power to change the thrust of government, they followed the people there, lived among them, evangelized among them, witnessed among them. So one of the forms of witness that the early Carmelites did was presence, just to be there, or to put up a school to enable the children of these displaced persons. And it was a form of service. And when it came also through particularly the ministry of Bishop Lamont, when he started to speak out, almost voicing what the Africans were not able to voice.
Lamont did not say it once and stop. Almost every year through the 1960s and into the 70s, the bishops of Rhodesia put their objections in writing. Peace through justice, problems of our people, a call to Christians, a crisis of conscience. Put together, these pastoral letters are an argument that a church which stayed silent in the face of injustice was no longer simply the church. But Lamont's words were only half the story. While the bishop argued in pastoral letters and courtrooms, his brethren were doing something just as deliberate, that is, building a church too rooted in its communities to be ignored. At St. Peter's Mission in Checheche, Father Cyprian Kennedy arrived to dry riverbank and little else. He built a clinic, a convent, classrooms, and an irrigation scheme that turned parched ground into wheat and cotton fields. At Avila Mission, Father Senan Egan made the same promise to barren land, piping water 8 miles from the Nyangombe River.
They planned up and put down the pump from Nyangombe to that mission. And then he built up about three tanks, each one 100,000 liters, 200,000 liters of the mission. And that pump was brought in by a fellow, he was a German soldier, an engineer, good one. And when he came in, he set up the whole thing from Nyangombe right up to the mission. And one of the places, a little company in here in Mutare, I think there is Mobile Electric. Maybe you have heard of it here. In Mobile Electric, it was a company, it was very well known. So they came up and set up the whole thing. From that time, water was being pumped from Nyangombe 50 kilometers into the mission. And there was plenty of it around. It was a good thing.
Further still, he built a church shaped like a traditional African hut, thatched, round, and with the identity of home.
After the Second Vatican Council, the talk of inculturation is the idea that he also wanted that it is not only in terms of certain practices, but also in terms of architecture. So he then built this, and he was very proud of that church. I met him myself when I was a student, and he was now living in Hatfield, St. Joseph's Hatfield. And he used to talk about St. Teresa of Avila, to say that is a beautiful church, and he wanted really to bring out the Africanness and beauty of Africa through the building. And I think built 1972, if I am not mistaken.
Regina Cheli grew a hospital with its own nursing school. Carmel College rose on the hills above Mutare. Krista Mambo became one of the country's finest schools for girls. In 1965, Edward Matara was ordained in Mutare at St. Joseph's by Bishop Lamont himself. He became the first local diocesan priest. A new sisterhood took root too, the Handmaids of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, founded for and increasingly led by local women.
Inini ndaigara ndichifunga kuti ndoda kutoita fata kwako. Tati singazivi masisa madiki kusiya LCBL. Asi ndakandone hai enyu kuda kutoita fata. Kuti zvimwe zvese ndati tokabva ndaenda paoltar pacho chaipo. Saka zvakazoita ndezvekuti LCBL dai kuri kuti ndakaramba ndichipfuta moto zvekuti ndikati ngatambirwe makandidate ngadai ndiri LCBL. Saka handina kuzoenda kuba. Kwakabva kwauya vaprista vakabva kuisland vatatu. Pano handipo papa naBishop Lamont. So he thought of starting a congregation called the Handmaids of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Before I joined the LCBL, I thought of joining the congregation that was in the diocese within my home. 1955, I became a candidate with my colleague. We were two. Tabva kugadzwa kuita macandidates, takafunga kuti tatoita masista. Inini rufaro rwangu rwari pamusoro chaipo kuti kuti kugona zvazviri mumwoyo mangu. But the hope of becoming a priest ceased because I had more knowledge about priesthood and sisterhood. So, but I was very happy that I became a sister.
Local guilds were also approved under the leadership of the bishop, most notably the Mount Carmel Guild for Women, which to this day represents the Diocese of Mutare's identity.
Chitendero aiwa tinacho. Nanhasi titorimo mugomo kamera. Tikungoendera mberi. Tirikutokurudzirawo vana vedu nevaroora kuti pindai chita chatakati inacho. Ndo musimboti wemuno maMutare.
By the mid-1970s, the Second Chimurenga, the War for Independence, had broken. Some priests and sisters, exhausted or endangered beyond what they could bear, went home.
Wakauya makomrades wana wedu wakati iwo kuna Father Igini tiri 30 saka tanga tiri kukumbirawo kuti mutitengerewo matrick suit sewanhu tikugara musango sewanhu munotsigira wana. Saka ndofunga Father awawo zvakawaremera kuti mari ndinodziwana kupi dzekuti nditengere wana awa. Saka wakabva wangorongedza neusiku ndobva watorana nevasista awo mapresentation sister tatirutaura wacho waishanda kuchipatara wana sister Dros nana Mother Peter nana sister Gonzaga. Ubva wangotorwa ubva wangoenda usiku ihwohwo ndokubva kwakaita macapuchin maningi kunoku Carmelites.
It was the first mission in the Diocese of Mutare that they had entered. So that was the first experience that they had on freedom fighters coming into the mission. And there were, Father Egan, he is conscious, he was unconscious to report. But it was sometime later that there was a decision made not to, the bishop said he would take full responsibility for actions of the priests.
But many did not. They had baptized these communities, taught in their classrooms, carried their mothers to hospital. Leaving for them was not an option.
When guerrillas came to hospitals, that they would be treated as persons in need of assistance. And if there was any problem, then they were to see the bishop. So, and even this is in the speech from the doc, the bishop himself speaks about that as an approach.
When parishioners were detained, beaten, or had property destroyed, the church's own Justice and Peace Commission helped them find lawyers.
Ndakasangana nevana vakabva kwaTangwena vaichengetwa nemaCarmelites paTriceal ungadisplacedwa nehondo ende vaiziva rungano kuti vakange vabva sei kumusha kwavo kuti vasvike paTriceal. Kuchengetwa kwaitwa vana vaipiwa zvese kubvira zvekudya, zvekupfeka, pekugara kana varwara vachirapwa paTriceal mission, vachiendeswa kuchikoro paTriceal mission. Vekusekondari vasikana vaizomboendawo Kriste Mambo. Asi ndakanga ndine vepaprimary. Ndakaona rudo rwechechi yangu yechikatoliki, specifically the Carmelite Friars vakange varipo.
2 priests Father Lawrence Lynch and Father Martin O'Regan were arrested and deported for refusing to report the presence of guerrillas on their mission.
Ana baba vaipiwa list on weekly basis ezviro zvaidiwa nemacomrades. Taizoti taunganidza zvedu isu sevadzidzisi taiita kapakupera kwemwedzi, asi ana baba vaita on weekly basis. Vatenga zvekudya, vatenga hembe zvoiswa mumotikari mana baba. Ana baba pavaenda kuma outstations fanike kuSt Rita's uko kunoita misa, vaichitakura zviro izvozvo. Ini ndakava nemukana wekuti ndaiturikira baba, ana baba vakanga vasingagoni shona sababa polio. Saka kwese kwavaienda ndaenda navo neshamwari yangu Moti. Zvanisikaitoti mwanasikana afambe ari wani nana father. Saka ndaenda neshamwari yangu kuti tichatese naMoti zvakati. Tikasvika paroad block. Ndangozi pfuurai, muri kuendepi? Kuti kuenda kumasi. Zapfuurai, muneiko baba? Kuti ndakatakura zviro zvevatenderi vangu. Topfuura zvedu. Toenda tambodivheta. Mwanoziva kune St Rita's uko, kwachiduku uko. Taidivheta kuenda kwamambo chiduku. Kwatainosiya staff yemacomrades. Tozoenda zvedu kuchechi on weekly basis.
Vakasvika rori nemasoja ndizoti dzanga dziri ngani. Father ward anga ari muofisi aiona zvimarori zvasvika. Father ward akabva angopinda straight, aibva anobuda kunzo, aibva abuda, aibva avhura door yekudzika underground. Aibva avhara door iri raapinda nakwamuraini. Ava vari kusvika ava vakasvika vaimutsvaka, vainotaura kuti anga ari pano, wadini, vaibva vapinda uko, vaibva vafamba mumba iyo, vaibva vatsvaga, vaibva vashaya. Izvo vashaya wanga vaine zvimanewspaper zvakatorwa zvichibva zvaiswa padhoo rekupinda muchechi. Ndipo wakaisa zvimapepa, manewspaper. Vaibva vadini, vaibva vatora matches, vaibva vabatidza. Saka mapepa aya pakauya mhepo yakapera kupeperutsa mafizha zviya zvaramba, moto wakaramba kubata, asi zvimapepa zvakapera kusva. At a later date, kana kuti muna 78 eri, Father ward akadhipurwa.
Auxiliary Bishop to be Patrick Mutume and Father Ignatius Monda were imprisoned for 4 years on the same charges. And still, extraordinarily, no priest or religious in the diocese was killed during the entire war, a fact many attribute directly to one decision: Bishop Lamont's order that these clergy never report a guerrilla's presence whatever the law demanded, and that he alone would answer for it.
Nyangwe ipo pahondo sekuru Raymond tairwa naye pamwe chete aiwasoti akagara pano ndotodare muzuva tiri panapa, iwo masoja akasvika kukaguguto. Sekuru akatiti honai makudo ayo, nditi zokuti taibatsira naye panguva yehondo.
It cost him everything. Bishop Lamont was put on trial in Mutare for failing to report the guerrillas and for inciting others to do likewise. The case made headlines as far away as London. Eventually, Lamont was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The sentence was suspended, and instead he was deported from the country he had served for over 30 years.
Do you think that similar action might be taken against missionaries in Rhodesia as has been taken against yourself?
Oh yes, I do think that's possible. There is one priest coming up on the same charge, and 2 of my own African priests have already been sentenced to the same kind of thing as I, but obviously they won't be deported, but unfortunately they have to go into prison, and that is somewhat humiliating for me because I've had the easy way out. I've been given the privilege of having a white skin, and that is humiliating.
So help me God.
On April 18, 1980, Zimbabwe became independent. After 15 years of escalating conflict, the war that had reshaped missions in the diocese was over. Bishop Lamont, invited home for the occasion, stood among the honored guests at the installation of the country's first black Prime Minister, Robert Mugabe. The bishop, who had been deported as an enemy of the state, returned as one of its witnesses to history. Lamont resumed his post as Bishop of Mutare, but not for long. In the early 1980s, he chose to step down, opening way for his successor, Alexio Muchabaiwa, consecrated the new Bishop of Mutare. For the first time in the diocese's history, an African bishop now led it, a local church led by its own. In 1982, Father Tom Power began a formation program for the country's first homegrown Carmelite brothers. It started in a borrowed house in the Vumba Hills. Within 3 years, it would move to a permanent home at Krista Mambo. For 40 years, the task had been to build a local church, missions, schools, hospitals, a clergy, a people who could call it their own. The following decades would ask a narrower question, not just whether Zimbabwe could have a church, but whether it could have Carmelites, formed here in the spirituality of Carmel itself.